Good evening and welcome to Global Lens News. I'm Sadia Afzal. The guns have fallen silent before, only to roar again. Just days after hopes emerged that diplomacy had managed to prevent a wider regional war, the United States and Iran have once again returned to the battlefield. Fresh American airstrikes, Iranian retaliation, renewed threats, and growing fears over the Strait of Hormuz have once again pushed the Middle East to the edge of a much larger conflict. The biggest question today is not whether the fighting has resumed. It already has. The real question is whether this latest exchange of attacks remains limited or becomes the beginning of a prolonged regional war with global consequences. The latest escalation began after Washington accused Iran of attacking commercial vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most strategically important waterways. The United States claimed these attacks threatened international maritime security and disrupted global trade. In response, American forces carried out a new wave of strikes targeting Iranian military infrastructure, missile sites, drone facilities, and coastal defense positions. Iran, however, rejected the American narrative and described the attacks as another violation of its sovereignty. Tehran responded by launching missiles and drones towards American military installations in the Gulf region, while warning that any further aggression would receive an even stronger response. This sudden collapse of the recent understanding has surprised many observers, because only weeks ago, both sides had agreed to suspend hostilities and reopen diplomatic channels. That agreement had raised hopes that one of the most dangerous confrontations in recent Middle Eastern history was finally moving towards political negotiations. Those hopes now appear to be fading. The Strait of Hormuz has once again become the center of global attention. Nearly 1/5 of the world's traded oil passes through this narrow waterway. Every military incident in this area immediately affects energy markets, shipping companies, insurance costs, and international trade. Whenever tensions increase in the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices react almost instantly. Shipping companies begin reassessing their routes. Insurance premiums increase. Global markets become nervous. For countries like Pakistan, which import large quantities of oil, every rise in international oil prices eventually translates into higher fuel prices, inflation, and increased economic pressure. This is why a military exchange between Washington and Tehran is not simply a regional issue. Its economic impact reaches every continent. The conflict also exposes the continuing strategic rivalry between military power and diplomacy. The United States argues that freedom of navigation through international waters cannot be compromised and says it will continue protecting commercial shipping. Iran argues that repeated military strikes and sanctions leave it with limited options to defend its national interests and regional influence. Neither side appears willing to make political concessions while military pressure continues. This creates a dangerous cycle. One attack produces another. Retaliation invites counter-retaliation. Diplomatic space continues shrinking. The biggest concern for international observers is miscalculation. History shows that major wars often begin not because governments initially seek full-scale conflict, but because repeated military exchanges gradually spiral beyond political control. A missile lands in the wrong place, civilian casualties increase, another country becomes involved, regional alliances are activated. Within days, a limited confrontation can transform into a multinational crisis. Another important dimension is the position of America's regional allies. Several Gulf countries host American military bases while simultaneously maintaining important economic and diplomatic relations with Iran. These governments now face an increasingly difficult balancing act. They seek regional stability because prolonged conflict directly threatens their economies, energy exports, and investment climate. At the same time, they cannot ignore their security partnerships with Washington. This delicate balance becomes harder to maintain every time missiles are launched across the Gulf. Any increase in Iranian military activity inevitably raises Israeli security concerns. Likewise, Iran continues viewing American and Israeli military coordination as part of a broader strategy aimed at limiting Tehran's regional influence. This mutual distrust makes de-escalation even more complicated. The international community is once again calling for restraint. Several countries continue urging both Washington and Tehran to return to negotiations before the situation becomes irreversible. Diplomats understand that military victories often produce temporary tactical gains, but rarely create lasting political solutions. Eventually, every conflict returns to the negotiating table. The only difference is how much destruction occurs before diplomacy resumes. Pakistan also has an important stake in regional stability. A wider conflict threatens energy security, regional trade, maritime commerce, and overall economic stability. Islamabad has consistently supported dialogue, respect for international law, and peaceful conflict resolution. Whether diplomacy succeeds once again depends largely on political decisions taken over the coming days. If military retaliation continues to dominate strategic thinking, the Middle East could enter another prolonged period of instability. If both sides recognize the enormous costs of escalation, there may still be an opportunity to revive negotiations. For now, however, the message from the battlefield is louder than the message from the negotiating table. The world is once again watching one of the most volatile regions on Earth. And everyone is asking the same question. Is this another temporary military confrontation, or is it the beginning of a much larger war that could reshape the Middle East and send shockwaves across the global economy? The answer may emerge not through speeches or diplomatic statements, but through the next missile that is launched or the next one that is not. This is Sadia Afzal for Global Lens News.